buckle up, because we're going to have a nostalgia trip. I know we're all waiting for 4.2 later on tonight, but in the meantime, I thought we could go over Genshin Impact's very early days, even the days where they thought it was a Zelda clone before its release. That's how I personally found out about this game, because it was floating around on social media that someone smashed their PS4, because they thought it was a Breath of the Wild ripoff. Hilarious. That's how my Genshin story started, and I waited for this game to release. Now we're going to be talking about 1.0, things you might remember, little details and major things, as well as maybe some stuff in 1.1 as well. There's a lot of stuff and little details that you might even forgot. I guarantee there'll be one thing you're like, oh yeah, totally forgot about that. So with that said, let's get the more obvious stuff out of the way. It wasn't a reputation. So reputation and get the glider for each city. That didn't exist till 1.1, the very patch after 1.0. Obviously this was a very new one, but the character select was not what it is today. That was introduced in 4.0. The TCG, I don't even remember, was that 3.3, a little after Sumeru, and then the fishing came out in 2.1, I believe. None of these things were in the game, obviously. So let's not forget about the teapot. That came out in 1.5. Now let's talk about the major changes, starting with Dragonspine. So Dragonspine was just a blip on the map like anywhere else for all of 1.0. So if you binged this game when it first came out like I did, it was just this very awkward void area that you just couldn't go near, and it kind of sucked. But once they added Dragonspine in 1.2, it just added so much like extra stuff that you could do for new players to do right away. And grinding was a nightmare in 1.0. There was not a lot of ways to get XP like there is now. So getting your AR up was annoying. The chasm, or the chasm, however you pronounce that, is another one that didn't exist. It was just a blip on the map. Now everything was a blip on the map, obviously, but the chasm and Dragonspine were actually labeled on the map, but just nothing was there. Those were the only two. Now, the OGs will remember this one. Artifacts were just falling on the ground every time you farmed an artifact domain. So if you had a Venti, you could use your Cyclone and screw everyone over. They quickly patched this in 1.1 because Venti mains, pretty much. And you had to leave a domain and re-enter it and do the loading screen every single time. That was annoying. When you were searching for Anemo Oculus and Geoculus, there was no way to track them on the map. You have this little star that pops up now after 1.1 and 1.2. I don't remember exactly which patch this fixed, but you had no indicators on your map with a little sound effect that happened when you actually see these. That didn't exist. You had to grind the old-fashioned way and just see it with your eyes. Oh boy, this one gives me nightmares. I blew like $250 on the standard banner to get Mona and Chi-Chi. I ended up getting all of them except for D-Luke, but yeah, you heard that right, Chi-Chi. She was top tier in 1.0. We'll get to that in a second, but this was the standard banner back in the day, and people didn't know how the banners really worked exactly. And then the first ever limited character, Venti, was absolutely busted at the time, and he's the only character I didn't try to get, ironically, because I had no idea what I was doing. What a nightmare it was to farm for artifacts, weapon materials, all that shit, because resin was only 120, and you had all these bosses, stuff to kill, with all these brand new characters. The game was brand new, so everything was new, and we had no resin, so they quickly fixed this in 1.1 to 160, and it's been that way ever since, even to today. Here's what a tier list looked like in 1.0. They even had Zhao in there. Zhao wasn't even out yet, but Zhao was in the beta with Ayaka, so they just threw him in there anyway. But this is what the tier list looked like. You know, you see Bennett and Xingqiu just slumming it down in A tier, while you got Chi-Chi SS. So, yeah, Barbara's S too. This was very common, and nobody really was building artifact sets correctly or anything like that. People were still getting wrecked by mobs. I remember venturing out from Mondstadt, just starting the game, into Liyue, and I must have died hundreds of times. It was super fun, mind you. I didn't have artifacts slapped on my characters, didn't level up, nothing. It was just a slaughter, basically. And the OGs will remember this too. Hell, even if you're newer, you might even remember this or seen this floating around. These are the cream of the crop leaks back in the early days of Genshin. Nobody knew any of these characters. Now all of these characters are out, with Yao Yao being the last one. Kokomi's got a complete redesign, and people thought Shenhe was actually Cloud Retainer, straight up. But yeah, no, it was just very interesting to see this now, that we actually got all of these characters now. Good old Ayaka in the beta. So Ayaka and Zhao were in the beta, so they were very highly anticipated characters, and people thought you get an Ayaka at AR-40, a free Ayaka. That was the rumor going around. It was complete bullshit, but AR-40 seemed like such an unreachable task at that time. It was so hard to grind up. And can you believe there was controversy about this? Yeah, people cared about this. Her literal underwear. So when she was finally released in 2.0, she didn't have the same underwear as the beta and people were pissed. I'm not even making this up. The first ever Genshin event. Did I even participate in this? No. I didn't even know what event was. I was too busy doing everything else that was brand new. But yeah, this was the first ever Genshin event. And Liyue actually wasn't completable until 1.1. So the final cutscenes and wrapping up the Liyue story didn't actually come out till 1.1 with Childe and Zhongli as playable characters. And at this time, Childe and Zhongli were like those early leaks that you see. They didn't drip market anything obviously at this time. That didn't start till Inazuma, but I remember it sucked waiting 40 days to be able to finish the Liyue story, just to wait a year to go to Inazuma. That was the longest wait ever. 1.1 players will actually remember this event. There was a food delivery event in Mondstadt and it was complete ass in my opinion. It was so bad that I didn't even complete it and get the free stuff, because if you sprinted too fast or moved around too hard, your food spoiled and you had to restart. It sucked. Stellar Reunion didn't exist for anyone that played 1.0 or 1.1. This shit didn't even come out till Dragonspine. So, oh, you guys will remember this one. Even the 1.1ers will. Scaramucci's initial release. And no one expected this because it was just in a random event. I don't think they've ever introduced a major character in an event like that. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember getting teased just really early in the Genshin's lifespan. We're like, oh shit, who the hell is this? The speculations were wild because they suspected he was from Inazuma, but we hadn't seen Inazuma yet. We wouldn't for some time after this, but this was hype. And that's pretty well it for all the very noteworthy things. Let me know if I forgot anything in the comments, and let me know when you started Genshin Impact. What patch? Comment down below. And, we're all waiting for 4.2 tonight. I can't wait. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, get a chance to play it. Fingers crossed for those insane lore dumps. I'm going to be covering that and covering Navia and all that stuff, so stay tuned for that. So feel free to sucker punch that like button, subscribe, help me get in the algorithm. Appreciate it. And as always, we'll see you guys in the next one. Later.